Okay, I would say that this is probably one of the longest running retro bikes there is. Harley Davidson Sportster. This is an Evo, but if you think about it, they produced these bikes from 1957 up until 2022, so that's a 65-year long run. If you include the predecessor of this being the K model, which was basically a flathead Sportster, because later Ironhead stuff will bolt onto a K model, so add in another 4 years to that. So basically 69 years pretty much. People malign these things because they don't like them. They call them girls' bikes or whatever, and usually ignore that because it's usually some fat guy on a whatever who's a poser, basically. Usually some guy that can't ride, can't. We won't even go into that. But I'd say this is more of an original retro bike because if you take this is a 2000, and you look at this bike and then you look at just say 1957. They're basically the same, double cradle loop frame, 45-degree push rod V-twin. Of course, this is a 5-speed versus a 4-speed, but other than that, the engine cases are almost identical. You could look at the cam cover on 57 and say, yep, that's a Sportster, and look at a cam cover on a 2020 model and say, yep, that's a Sportster, almost identical. So you have to look at it like a K model, absolutely neat bike. No power whatsoever, but neat bike. You could take a Ironhead top end and stick it on a K model and it'd work just fine. And that was done a lot before. I mean, like I said, a lot of people hate these things, but they're so versatile. You could ride it around stock. You could turn it into a chopper, weld on hardtail, whatever, cafe racer, bobber, dirt track bike, and they did race these in 883 dirt flat track series. I road raced one of these back in the 90s on their 883 road race series from AMA CCS. You can drag race them, of course. You can drag race anything, but they are pretty neat. And between this and the Big Twin, I can say from experience that these things have always had less warranty claims than anything Big Twin did. Least problems compared to a Big Twin. You didn't have the same amount of oil leaks out of the primary. You weren't breaking primaries. Transmissions are pretty tough. Actually, other than this one and the one I got on the lift over there, which that one needed a shift fork, and this one needs a shift fork too. Because both these bikes were dumped on the left side and it bent the shift fork, so I still got to put a shift fork in this one, first and second gear shift fork. But extremely versatile bikes. I've had guys that buy an 883 as a commuter bike because the insurance is cheaper from an 883 versus a 1200. And they do get, about, depending on how you're riding it, where you're riding it, how much throttle you're giving it, you get about over 50 miles to the gallon. That's depending on who's riding it. I tend to get less gas mileage out of any bike that I have. I did do some back in the 90s with a 1200 kit that I did myself, which was totally different. Wasn't the dish top pistons. I didn't like that so much. I basically put 1200 size valves in there. So you sink the valves down in the heads a little bit further with the 1200 valves and open up the ports a little bit. And then I'd cut the heads at a 20 degree in the lathe, relieve some of the compression. And by doing it that way, it's like modular. Every set I did, I knew were exactly 10-to-1 compression ratio. And I would dish top the stock pistons, stock 1200 pistons myself, chuck them off the lathe and cut a little dish in there, just a little bit. That made it exactly 10-to-1. But out of those bikes, it's with stock cams, Not just one guy. I had, because I took a survey on this stuff, had a guy come in and he claimed he was getting 62 miles to the gallon out of that 1200 setup. And I was like, cool. Then I got to thinking about it. I'd done probably 10, 15, 20 of these kits like that. Then started calling people up and then asked them to check their gas mileage to see what kind of gas mileage they're getting out of them. And all of them were between 65, 55, and 65, no matter how they were riding it. So better combustion chamber action there, better head flow, whatever. Anyway, it worked. But overall, the only problems I ever have out of these were, base gasket leaks, which is out of every Evo, base gasket leaks. Very rarely transmission problems unless the bike was wrecked on the shifter side and the shifter jammed in the gear and bent a shift fork. Then you have shifter problems. Motor mount bolts coming loose. That's every single Sportster ever. Up until the rubber mounts in 04. Some of the earlier ones, we had problems with rocker box gaskets leaking because of basically the material of the rocker box gaskets. They were paper, like Prentice-Seal paper, and they would get hot. And the rocker boxes do move slightly on the head. It's hard to believe they do, but they do move around a little bit, even though they're bolted down and torqued down. Heating and cooling expansion, they move slightly. And that tends to, gaskets get brittle and it spits the gasket out on one side of it. And then ever since you went to the steel gaskets, basically steel head gasket, steel base gasket, and steel rocker box gasket, bottom of the rocker boxes, those problems disappeared. But neat bikes, they've done some crazy things on them. I'm talking back in the 60s, seen guys running, I didn't see them, but I know instances that are recorded where guys have gone in the 9s, in the 60s on Ironhead Sportsters. Those weren't very big motors by today's standards. You're not really huge motors. What they were working with is you would have, they'd put stroker flywheels in there, typically as big as stroker flywheels as they could get, so like 5-inch stroke. And they'd use 3 7/16" bore, which is about all you could fit in a set of Ironhead cases. And even then, you'd have to weld the cases up around the base gasket surface to support them. But that setup, I think it was Ron Trock used to make those cylinders for them things, the 3 7/16" cylinders. And that was maybe 85 inches, I think, 84, 85 inches, somewhere in there with that setup. But you think of bikes like Turnip Eater, was going, 180 miles an hour on a Sportster in the 60s. Or Top Fuel bikes, Top Fuel Sportster, and running. I heard somebody saying that long time ago, they run in the 8s with those things, like 850, 860, 890, whatever. Running nitromethane, of course. Not really nowhere near a street bike. But all in all, neat bikes. And you see bikes now, everybody's doing this vintage retro thing. You got retro Triumphs and Royal Enfields and Honda, Kawasaki doing them. I know Yamaha's got a couple. I don't know if Suzuki does or not. I don't really pay much attention to that stuff. I think they might, maybe, not sure. If not, they probably should be, because a lot of people are buying retro-looking bikes now. That being said, they did discontinue this in 2022. So, 65 year long run, that's pretty good. Haven't ridden a new one yet. Haven't had the chance to. Neat looking bike though. Liquid cooled, 60-degree twin. Supposed to be 100, whatever, 100 horsepower, 105, whatever it is. Sounds good. Sign me up. But like I said, haven't ridden one, haven't sat on one. I've seen them at the dealer. And other than the damn big damn 2-liter Pepsi bottle exhaust hanging off the side, it's a neat looking bike. Can't get over the exhaust system that's this damn big around hanging out the side. But yeah, they do what they got to do with that stuff to make it pass emissions. Anyway, just a reminder, this is truly a retro bike. And hope everybody has a good weekend. And while we're at it, this here is be considered a retro bike too. That's what we're going for. Haven't really been working on it. It's been hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold. But we'll get to it when we get to it. I still have to come up with a gas tank for it. And looking at several ones. Wasn't really sure. That, I got some specs on one, but haven't bought one yet. That haven't decided between like a Norton Manx tank, which looks pretty good, Norton Roadster tank, or a Royal Enfield has a good looking tank that is actually fairly close to the mounting tabs on this thing. I'll probably have to move the mounting tabs a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. I'll get to this thing when we get to it. I think we're going to try and move this year. I know we're trying to put an offer on a house and see how it goes. It's probably going to be a while before I get back on this one. And that one there, it's going to be gone here hopefully before too long. After I do the shift fork on the first gear, I'll be able to get rid of that thing, and maybe that'll pay for part of my garage, at least a little bit, enough to get started anyway. But anyway, everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. All that stuff. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it a lot. Guys, take care. Thanks for watching.